You're listening to Drinks and a Movie with your host, Rudy. Spoiler alert.
All right, Drinks and Movie Podcast. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, checking out this latest episode. I've got a very special guest here. I've got the educated barfly himself, Leandro. Yo, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've really wanted to have you on. I think we were talking about this a few minutes ago. Like, I discovered your channel several years ago when I started moving up to bartending, and I was like, all right, I got to study this on my own. I got to figure out some of these cocktails for myself, and happened to come across your channel. And I remember I recognized you because I used to go to Kohl's a lot.
Oh, okay.
They did Tuesday all day happy hour and all that. And then I remember seeing you there, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And your channel just had such good quality and production value, and the knowledge is great. I like that you get into the history. So we'll chat about that. We also have this new Sagamore pick that you chose along with a couple other, spirits influencers. So we'll chat about this as well. But
Good.
Yeah,
It's good stuff. Good juice.
But I guess to start, man. What was your journey into bartending? How did you first start with that?
Well, it's really funny, actually, because this is like a film and spirits podcast. And, the film industry played big into how I started as a bartender. I started as a bartender because I got salty. I was working as a production assistant in commercials and music videos and the occasional reality TV show and the occasional film, like narrative feature or whatever. And, I know my producing partner, Marius, because we were actually production assistants together. Marius is from Norway, and he was actually directing music videos in Norway. And then he came over here, and when he came over here, they were like, well, we don't know who you are, so you're going to have to start as a production assistant. So he started as a production assistant and then quickly moved into producing. And then I started as a production assistant because I was just dating a makeup artist. I was working as a bike messenger in downtown LA, which is where we're at right now. There's a lot of things that come full circle with this podcast and me. Though I hope it'll probably come out while we're talking. But anyway, I was dating a makeup artist. She was like, you make $100 a day as kind of busting your ass on a bicycle, filing things in court. She's like, I know some producers and I could probably get you a job as a production assistant and you can make $200 a day. And I was like, that sounds cool. I was in my, kind of early to mid 20s and kind of looking for something to do. I didn't want to be a bike messenger. It was just the best paying job that I could find after moving to LA. So she got me in there and I started working as a production assistant. And then over a few years, I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And I wasn't seeing myself as a grip or an electrician or something like that. And, I didn't have any aspirations to direct. I did see a lot of commercial actors get paid a lot of money to do very little. Yeah. And I was like, how can I get in on that? So I got myself an agent, like a commercial agent. Oh, wow. And I was like, well, I need my days free. And one of the other production assistants that I worked for, this guy, one of the other production assistants that I worked with, this guy named Jared Simonetto, was like, I work in a nightclub part-time. I could, in Hollywood, I could probably get you a job as a barback. And we make pretty good money, especially on the weekends. It's house music, and I was a place called King, so that's what I did. I went and met the owner. It worked out. I got a job as a barback, and that's how I started in the bar industry.
Yeah, nice. How long did you barback until you eventually started crafting cocktails?
Well, the thing about nightclubs in Hollywood is that unless you are a big-breasted female, you're not gonna get a regular. Well, this is how it was then. I don't know. Right. I don't know how it is now, but back then, unless you were a female and hot, you weren't gonna get a regular shift as a bartender. Yeah. So basically, what I did is I worked there as a barback for a couple of years. And then every now and again, after a couple of years, and I kind of knew the job, every now and again, one of the girls would call out, or if it was a Wednesday night or a Thursday night when nothing is happening, then they'll allow us to bartend. But even barbacking at that nightclub was a good amount of money. I mean, there's more money barbacking at a nightclub as I made in some bars as a bartender or even as head bartender.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Some people have told me I should consider getting into one of those gigs. I'm like, I don't know. That's a lot.
There's a lot of baloney that's attached to working in nightclubs, man. And some of it's not worth it. For instance, I didn't have one night in 4 years that I didn't either come over the bar at someone or someone came over the bar at me. And then there's, and then security's there, but they're not always Johnny on the spot. People are getting really drunk really fast. They don't care what they're drinking. They're just trying to get hammered. Right. and it's kind of a mess. And it's, and then also that like music's super loud and, I definitely have hearing loss because of it, even after using earplugs for, pretty much that whole time, I still have a little hearing loss from it for sure. 100%.
Yeah. How did you transition into bartending though? Because for you, it's like clearly, I think you're more than just like a bartender. Like you're really into history and like crafting and creating cocktails. I mean, how did I guess what made the turn where you knew that this was something you were, I guess, really into,
Well, I burned out at the nightclub, and a lot of the reason why I burned out at the nightclub is because I cannot sleep during the day. Even if I have blackout curtains, I can't sleep during the day. Like even if I make it dark, like if my brain knows that it's light outside, then I'm up. And I was working until 2:00 in the morning, then doing after hours until 4 or 4:30. And then we were cleaning because the owner didn't want to spring for a cleaning crew. So then we were from 4:30 to about 6, we're cleaning. And then I get home, it was just in Hollywood and I just live in West Hollywood. So, I was riding my bike most times to work anyway. So it wasn't really that far, but let's just say call it 20-minute commute home. As I'm going to sleep, my household is awaking. Yeah. And then I sleep for 2 hours. And I did that for 4 years. And I was starting to get headaches and, really, it just wasn't a very good, wasn't good style of life really. So I quit, and then I quit with nothing to go to. And I found myself in downtown in the Arts District at this place called Swill, which was the first ever, I guess the country's first ever automatic wine dispensing bar. So the owner was this kind of wealthy guy that had a loft in downtown, and he had gone to Italy, and he had found these like automatic wine dispensing machines, and he thought they were so cool that he wanted to bring them to the United States, and it was going to be this new big thing. And so he bought like several of these machines. He took a lease in downtown. He made this wine bar called Swill, and it had a bunch of these wine dispensing machines, and we were like the first bar to do that. And the wine dispensing machines pretty much failed spectacularly. Yeah. I think they still have them. I was just in Italy this summer, and I think I actually saw a few bars where there's still like wine bars that still use these machines. And they are pretty cool, although they're a little finicky. But while I was there, I'm just a really good talker, and I'm really good with customers. And so I would just kind of bullshit my way through like wine. Like I would read the back of wine labels, and then people would ask me for recommendations, and I would just repeat what I read on the back of it without really knowing anything. Right. And people loved me there. Yeah. They were like, this guy knows everything. And even the owner was like, dude, this guy knows everything. And so I had a friend named Plex who was working across the street at a place called Royal Clayton's, which is now called the Something Pig or something. It's like right on the corner of, I don't know. I can't even remember the street. It's like Industrial and something or something. But it's like around the corner from Tony's. Okay. None of your listeners know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so there's this place across the street called Royal Clayton's, which is like this British themed bar. And I had a friend working there. And he and a bunch of, I guess they were closing, and they had told their staff, like, we're closing. You guys don't have a job. So a lot of them. So Brent Falco, one of the head bartenders there, was making the jump over to Kohl's, and he was moving over there too. Or he had like just recently moved over there with a bunch of the staff from Royal Clayton's. And so she staffed up, she was the bar manager over there. She staffed up a whole bunch of people. And so so then he got me in as a bar back at Kohl's, and that's how I started there. And then I found being in a bar, like a proper cocktail bar, so easy because I was so used to bar backing in like a place that was like 10 deep at the bar. That it was so easy for me to do it that like the bartenders would get stressed out when there was like 6 people in front of them. And I would just knock it out. And so I just made it my mission to figure out, like, on the first 3 shifts that I worked, I figured out how each bartender worked. And if you guys are trying to be a bar back ever in your life, do what I say right now, and you will be the best bar back ever, and then you will be promoted immediately. But this is what you do. This is what I did. I found out what their working style was and what they needed during the shift, and I made sure they always had it without ever having to ask me. So every 45 minutes during the shift, I would go through the well and see what they were low on, and then I would just take the vodka, the gin, or whatever they needed and put it on the side of their well, a new one, so that as soon as they were done, they could just switch it out without being asked. I counted how many ginger beers were underneath the well for like Moscow Mules and stuff. And
Yeah.
I made sure that same number from the beginning to the end of the shifts were always there.
Yeah.
I went through all of their syrups. I made sure I like product tested every syrup before shifts would start. And basically I just caught the attention of the bar manager, who was like, this dude's like the best barman we've ever had, but also like he's a bartender. Like this guy can hustle. And so once I had the basics down, in about 2 months or 3 months, I got promoted to bartender.
Nice.
And then the whole love of history is great, because I've always just been a good humanities student. I really love like art history and geography, and Cole's sort of demanded that under this particular bar manager, like that we know the history behind the drinks and stuff. And when I found the correlation behind like U.S. history and the old fashioned or something, I got really hooked on it. It was pretty awesome. And so that was just like a natural thing that I gravitate towards, just an interest that I've always had.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense too. It's funny you talk about that with the bar backing style, because I'm kind of competitive, like just myself. So when I started, I had like a similar vibe where I'm like, I just want to have nights where they don't ever ask me anything. Like that's a goal. They need to not have to ask for straws or whatever the case. It just needs to always be there. And yeah, I think it works well.
I mean, I think I just operate better when somebody doesn't have to ask me for stuff. Like I don't really want my boss to be breathing down my neck. I don't want anybody to talk to me. I just want to like go in and knock out my duties and leave. And then I also want to make sure that everyone's taken care of, because the thing is that what a lot of people don't understand, especially barbacks, is that even though barbacks make a less of a cut than a bartender, or they make 20% of the bartender shifts or whatever standard at your bar, the more money they make, the more money you make. Not to mention the fact that if you make yourself the best barback, they're going to say, you know what, we got to give him an extra 10% because he made sure that we were like, it's just only fair. And unless you have, bartenders that are real jerks or really don't understand what they're getting, which luckily wasn't the case at Cole's. We were like a big family there.
Yeah.
You always get a little extra cut of people's, tips. And I think that just impressed on me, and I think that just having a hustle in a nightclub where like everything is a pain in the ass for 6 hours or something, like every single thing that you do is a complete pain in the ass, like restocking anything, you're going through crowds of people and just having to be fast was just like over preparation for like a semi-busy normal bar,
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy to think of that contrast from nightclub to Cole's. Like, yeah, definitely over prep. That's right. Well, that's good. I mean, that definitely worked out for you. I'm sure the nightclub thing was terrible.
It was great training. Yeah, 100%. It was good training. I think everybody should go work in a nightclub for 6 months.
Yeah,
just to make them fast and to understand how good they have it at their regular job or whatever.
Right. So, how did you transition into doing your YouTube channel, The Educated Barfly?
Okay, well, as we were talking about a little earlier before cameras were rolling and recording equipment was rolling, I felt like I was aging out of bartending.
Right.
Like I was having tennis elbow and I had rotator cuff problems and back problems, and I was like falling apart. And honestly, I started as a bartender much older than most people. Like, I started my bartending career when I was in my early 30s, like I wasn't like this 22-year-old kid, And so I was, it was taking like a physical toll on me. Late nights were taking a physical toll on me. I had just had a kid. And at the time that I had a kid, I was doing like the busiest shifts Sunday through, it was like basically like Wednesday through Sunday until 4 o'clock in the morning, because at Cole's, even though we had a cleaning crew come in, we would still have to clean our wells and whatever. So you stop at 2, you clean your wells for an hour, you make sure that the bar back is done. Nobody left before anyone else.
Yeah.
And then we were out of there. Then I'm driving home, 8 miles. So, I'm not home till 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
And it was taking a toll on me as well. And I just was kind of over the whole thing, but I didn't see myself as a brand ambassador, which I had a bunch of opportunities. Companies come to me like, do you want to be a brand ambassador? I had a little kid though. I didn't want to just be like on a plane, like going all over the place and, and selling for a brand. And then also I didn't have any prospects to open a bar. And even if I did, I don't know if I really want to do that. So I had this idea for a show that we called Drink. And, I have been really inspired. This is around the time that Chef's Table came out, and I was really inspired by that and thinking to myself, like, actually bartending is getting really culinary right now. Like there is no show, it's kind of ironic that I'm saying that now, but there is no show on television that kind of features bartenders doing these really culinary cool things.
Yeah.
So we should make a show. So I got together $10,000 with actually one of my regulars that became a really good friend of mine and me, like put our money together. And we hired a cinematographer and we made like a trailer for a show. And then we went to go and my wife's a director. So she had her manager, who's kind of a big deal manager, kind of take it. He loved the project. He loved this trailer that we cut, and we did it in this very cinematic, very, chef's table style. And he took it to production companies, and he had a bunch of interest, but the resounding, the consensus on that was that we were nobodies, and they loved the idea, but like there was no way we would have been able to be involved. And so I didn't want to I thought it was too good of an idea to give away, just give away to someone. And not only that, but also I had done a little bit of market research in film and television and realized that like most of the bar shows that had existed were done really badly. Like you give a production, it's because the thing is that there's no bar production people. There's like people who know the bar and there are production people, right? And the production people know how to make films, but there wasn't anyone at that time that could do both. And so the people that would make bar shows and sell it to Netflix or whatever, they did kind of a bad job. And it's like they needed someone at least to consult that knows what to do so that they can kind of build their episodes and have them be relevant. But, but they, so that didn't really exist at the time. And so we just said, like, I don't know if it was me or Marius, but like Marius wasn't originally part of the project, but he was getting interested in videography and he wanted to make a YouTube channel about building Porsches because that's what he does in his spare time. And so he had asked if he could just come and shoot, BTS on our, well, that's behind the scenes for people who don't know, but shoot behind the scenes on our shoot. And we said, fine. And it was really lucky that we did because we rented this nice Ari Alexa, this really fancy camera, $800 a day rental. Yeah. And the guy who rented it to us didn't give us the right fucking lens mount. Oh, I don't know if I can swear.
You can.
Okay, sorry. I've been swearing a little anyway. I don't know why I just all of a sudden thought that. So for that first day of this 3-day shoot, we didn't have that camera available to us, and Marius came in with his like Panasonic GH5.
Hell yeah.
And like saved the day. So then I don't know if it was like Marius or me, or I don't know if even Marius and I had a conversation about continuing. But I'm going to give Marius the credit on this. I think it was him that was like, we should start a YouTube channel. And then I was thinking to myself, like, oh, if we start a YouTube channel, and I was like, naive thought, like, and then we built a social network of several 100,000 or million people, then we would have more power to make this show that I want to make. So originally, The Educated Barfly was called Drink. And it wasn't supposed to be me in front of the camera. It was supposed to be me directing, Marius producing and cinematography, and then we'd both do the edit. Well, this was the original idea anyway. And then I would get my bartender friends to come in, and we were just basically making the drink show that I wanted to do, but just like in my kitchen. Right. The problem with that, which is what we found out, was that there were 2 problems with working with bartenders. A, it's like herding cats. Yeah. They'll say, oh, yeah, I'm available to like 30 minutes before you're about to have them in, and then they cancel the last minute. Yeah. And then another thing is that they're like, oh, yeah, I was an actor, and that's why I became a bartender, and then you get them on camera, and they freeze. And then you have to sit there for 4 hours, like coaching 6 words out of them. Yeah. And so it just wasn't sustainable. We did work with a few really good bartenders. There's some old episodes with my friend Aaron Melendrez, who did an absolutely smashing job at the drink that he did. I can't remember what it was. And then we also did one with a good friend of mine who I'm still good friends with, who's up in San Francisco now, named Chris Day, who was also at Kohl's for a long time. He worked at Honeycutt, and he's actually a scientist and a bartender. And so anytime I have science questions, I always go to him and ask him like, how do we do this? Or how do we run this test or whatever? He's been really indispensable. And so his episode is really cool as well. But some of the other bartenders that we worked with, it was very difficult to do. Yeah. And Marius just came to me and said, this isn't sustainable. Like we need to have one person on camera. And honestly, I don't really like asking people to work for free. Right. So you should probably do it. And then, so I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And I didn't realize, like I had been an actor and I had been on camera before, but it was always with like scripted lines. But this was like being yourself on camera and like carrying a show, and that was very difficult. And the first episodes, if anyone wants to go look back, are horrible, cringe-worthy, and I only keep them up there because it just shows how far we've come.
Yeah. Man, wow. And I'm still thinking about that PL mount situation. That's rough.
Oh yeah, dude, it was crazy.
You got your money back for it, I hope, right?
Well, no, he gave us I think he cut one day of the rental off, and then he gave us the right mount the next day. So for the 2, following days, we had that camera and we shot some really nice stuff with it. But yeah, he gave us like a discount on our rental because that was pretty. That was rough, dude. I was freaking out.
And so, yeah,
and not only that, but we had we were shooting at Kohl's that first day because they allowed me to shoot there. So we had come up, we had offloaded everything. We had to get in there at 4:00 in the morning. We had to be out at 11, and we had a lot of shit to shoot. So I was really sweating bullets, and he really came in and saved the day with that GH5. And then we subsequently shot on that GH5 for all of the first 2 years or whatever, Barfly.
Yeah, and it looks great too. I mean, and I like that. I mean, I guess when you guys shoot, do you get different locations and little studio sets? Because it doesn't just look like a house. You look like you have a good setup going. It looks super professional.
Well, the kitchen one was my kitchen.
That is your kitchen. Okay.
So the kitchen, when it was in white kitchen, what we call the white void now, it had nothing in it. It was my kitchen.
Okay.
Then my kitchen had some construction being done, so we moved out of my kitchen and we went to a good friend of mine named Jessie Smythe, who I worked with at Tony's. She built her and her boyfriend, I think fiance now actually, but they lived together out in Highland Park, and they built their garage into a speakeasy.
Oh,
called the Stubborn Nail.
Nice.
And it was it's a full on speakeasy. And so when my kitchen was going into construction, she graciously allowed us to shoot there. So we would go there once a week and shoot 15 episodes to just keep the thing going. And then once my kitchen was done, we moved back into the kitchen. And nowadays we actually built a set in my garage. So now it's a set built into my garage, but it's customized.
Man, that's awesome, man. And so, you get the idea. You guys are trying to pitch it as an actual show, TV show. Like the idea, but they don't want to have you guys involved. It's almost like Rocky, right? Where you got to fight for I wrote this thing, but I'm going to be in it.
Right.
I need to do this. And then you guys do the YouTube part now. I mean, did you guys shoot multiple episodes in a day? Is that typically how you try to schedule it? All right, we have this many hours and we're going to do these episodes all in this one sitting?
Yeah, I mean, our approach changes based on how the show changes, because over the years there have been lots of different things. Not to mention that we tried a lot of stuff that worked and didn't work and whatever to figure out YouTube, because when you first do YouTube, it's not very easy to get eyes on your thing.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of months before we really got anyone to watch. And quite honestly, I'm pretty surprised that we got anyone to watch anyway. But it's very difficult to figure out. So a lot of things that we were doing were just we'll try this, we'll try that. And the show has changed over the years. So initially, for instance, I don't know if it was, I think it was I had read this article about Casey Neistat, everybody's favorite, famous YouTuber, probably one of the first really big kind of influencer YouTuber guys. He's more of a filmmaker than an influencer, though.
Right.
I think influencer has kind of a terrible connotation that all you do is sit around and ski in a bathing suit in a snowstorm in New York and don't add anything, But he's an actual filmmaker and really good, and his videos are amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking smack on Casey Neistat, but I had read something in an article where he had been being interviewed, and he had said, it took me 5 years to get 1 million people on YouTube, and then after I started my daily vlog, posting every single day, it took me 6 months to get another 5 million, to get another 1 million or something. And so I was like, we should post every day. And Marius was like, how do we do that? So originally we were doing we were doing an episode, and then the next day we do the tasting notes as a separate video, which everybody hated.
Yeah.
Hands down, they hated it. Yeah. But it allowed us to post 5 days a week. And
right.
when we were posting 5 days a week, the algorithm was pushing our videos out because we were just coming out with them so fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, everyone's like, you should just do the tasting notes in the actual video, buddy. So we tried that. So originally we were just doing one video, and when we were just doing like one video, like one cocktail a day in that video, as opposed to like 5 cocktails or like kind of what we call list videos now.
Yeah.
We would shoot like 15 in a sitting, or we would shoot
Right.
like 10 in a sitting, and we would just try and go through them really quickly. Now though, there's a lot more research that's involved.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot more, like before I didn't script. Everything's off the top of my head. Everything
Yeah.
was just out of the knowledge that I had. I was like, if I'm going to be the knowledgeable bartender on YouTube, then I want it to be my actual knowledge,
Yeah.
not like a bunch of research.
Right.
And that's not to say that I didn't research a little bit, but a lot of it was just like what I learned at Kohl's.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized really quickly that some of the things that I learned at Kohl's were complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's not how science works or whatever. You know, I've definitely learned some lessons. So nowadays it's a lot more research. It's a lot more scripted. I do actually script some of the stuff that I do. And so it's a different approach. And so now it's like, we'll be lucky if we get 2 done in a day.
Right. No, that makes me think sometimes when I listen back to my older episodes, like, because I just learn as I go, and I think about something I said years ago where I'm like, oh, that was completely fucking wrong. I hope
Right.
nobody
Yeah, totally.
hates me for that.
I know, but I keep all my mistakes up. You know, but I've said a lot of really wrong things. You know?
Yeah.
And not only that, but once you start getting attention,
Right.
and people are actually watching your content and listening to what you say, you get a lot of people correcting you if you're not right. So now I have to be really careful that I'm really right about what I say.
Yeah.
Because I will know within 30 seconds of posting anything how wrong I am.
Right.
Which I don't mind being wrong. I mean, what a lot of people don't understand is that the educated barfly is not a reference to myself. It's a reference to the viewer. So I'm not, like, I always just say, like, I'm not a barfly. I'm a bar professional. The people who are barflies are the people who enjoy cocktails and watch a show. I mean, I am a little bit of a barfly. It's not true. I actually hang out in bars, and I'm not a bar professional anymore. But at the time I was, and so it's a reference to, like, you know, the barfly getting educated.
Yeah,
Not necessarily myself.
Let's jump into the Sagamore since we're talking about the show and everything. So this is the Creator's Cask, something that you picked out with a few other influencers, and we've got, I'll have to crop in here, but we've got this one by EB, Educated Barfly. I haven't even done Sagamore on the show yet, which is crazy because I love it. I've got like so many of these bottles, but are you down to maybe kind of take us through the basics of Sagamore and what the experience was getting, I guess, chosen to do this pick and like how that all kind of worked out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big rye enthusiast, so when we got the opportunity, I jumped on it immediately. You know, what a lot of people don't really realize is that rye whiskey is the first American whiskey.
Right.
So like in distilled spirits, the first like distilled spirits we were messing with was rum, but all the rum came from, you know, English and French colonies in the Caribbean, you know, and then they were basically realizing, you know, back in the day, I don't know if anyone has or if you've read that book And a Bottle of Rum, but you know what's kind of great about that book is it kind of takes you through the history of rum. And, you know, in the beginning, when the sugar plantations had just started in the Caribbean, they were taking the molasses that was the byproduct of making sugar and dumping it in the ocean because they didn't know what to do with it. It was just like, you know, industrial waste. And then it was probably a slave that was working on the plantations that realized that you could distill it. And so they started making rum. Then they took that rum and they started selling it to the colonies as like a cheap drink because a lot of people in the colonies couldn't afford the like beer and wine that was coming from England or coming from Europe. It was just too expensive. That was only for the rich people. So the poorer people would drink rum. And then the first distilleries that we had in the country were rum. But then after that, we did Applejack, which is the first American distilled spirit. We actually created this distilled spirit. And then after that was rye whiskey. So this goes back to our, you know, rye whiskey goes back to our roots as a country.
Yeah.
I like the flavor profile a little bit more. You know, it's a little spicier. It's a little maltier. It has this kind of malty flavor to it that you don't get with bourbon. A lot of people say spice, but it's like a dryness that accounts for that spice. You know what I mean? And it balances out the cocktails better. So like first cocktails were you know first old fashions were probably made with rye.
Yeah.
And then you know that dryness and that maltiness and that kind of spice really balances out that sugar better in those cocktails. And so for me, this is the superior whiskey to have, more so than bourbon. Even though I was like started as a bourbon lover, I really did, but I like this better. I feel like I'm going through a time machine when I drink it.
Yeah.
And then as far as Sagamore, what really resonated with me about their brand is that they took like the idea of a Maryland style rye.
Yeah.
And they want to bring that back as like a specialized thing, right? We talk about certain types, like we talk about bourbon as like a very specialized thing coming from a very special place or whatever, even though it can really be made anywhere. But there were slight differences between like a Pennsylvania rye and a Maryland rye, and they really hooked into that story. Also they're doing a lot of good in Baltimore, which is a fantastic city. Definitely not the same thing you're going to see on David Simon television shows like The Wire and We Own the City. That's a portion of it, but really it's like a city that has really deep roots into the history of the country. And it's a vibrant city. There's a lot of great bars and cocktails there. And so all of that was like, yeah, we got to do this. It's a great story.
Rye was always my first favorite of the whiskeys too. Like I remember when I started working here and I didn't know anything. I was like, I don't know what vermouth is or bitters or any of that. I knew nothing. I wasn't a big drinker or anything. And I remember one of my coworkers were like, all right, you have to try these different whiskeys. So it was like an Irish, a couple different scotches, bourbon, and then rye. And I thought I liked rum at the time because I just drank like Captain and Coke, you know what I mean? Right. But I didn't drink like rum. And so they were like, you're probably going to like bourbon because it's sweeter, but the rye like took my heart immediately. It's always been my thing. I didn't really even like get deep into bourbon until the last couple of years.
Right.
And yeah, I've just been really loving, Sagamore's products. I like that they try all these crazy finishes, and then now in these, like currently and in these coming years, it's going to become like all their distillate. I think they just released like a bottled and bond. That's all theirs. And it's awesome. So how did they reach out to you and these other influencers to do this? Or like how did it come to getting the actual pick?
Yeah, they reached out to us and said, well, it's really funny it's just kind of funny how life works because, Marius and I were talking about like, how do we wanted to do travel content. We're like, how do we get invited to more distilleries and stuff? And then, and like kind of offset the cost by doing something that's worthwhile, like making a show or making a video that's worthwhile. And then I was also thinking to myself, like, how does one get a barrel pick? Like, I wonder if we can like partner with a liquor store that has a license and then do a barrel pick and then do a video on showing how a barrel pick is done. So this was like a conversation that we had been having for a few months. And then we got an email from Sagamore saying like, listen, we really like your videos. And what we're trying to do is not just take people out of the whiskey world, but like a bunch of different kind of people in the spirits world that have different perspectives on whiskey and then combine them, right? So you have, they got the whiskey nomad who's like very knowledgeable about whiskey. She does a lot of Scotch stuff, a lot of, Indian, a lot of Indian whiskeys, all these different types of whiskey. She knows a lot. She knows a lot about just whiskey in general. I think she sits on the board of like Women Who Whiskey in San Diego. And then you have, this guy Ryan, who's, can't remember his last name, but his handle is that one dude Ryan. He's on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And then he's really knowledgeable about all whiskey too, but he really is knowledgeable like bourbon and rye and American whiskeys, right? He does that a lot in his content. And then they came to me, which is like the cocktail guy, Rich. It's like a whole different perspective on a spirit because I'm thinking more about like what do the flavor profiles pair with when I'm making cocktails. And then they got this other guy called the Brew Brother who owns a brewery, right? And so like, and then also does some whiskey content. But what's kind of cool about him is that, the raw material to making whiskey is beer. You make whiskey out of beer. You take a mash and ferment it, and then you take that ferment and you distill it, right? So you're basically making it out of beer. And so they got these different perspectives, and they thought it would be interesting to take these different perspectives, bring us out to Baltimore, do a kind of a walk through the distillery, look at the they have this really they have a lot of like history. Going back into like Baltimore and Maryland, and then they have also a racing like farm basically. And then they thought, we did all that, and then they thought, then what we'll do is we'll sit down and they'll give us like 4 barrels to choose from, and then we'll talk through it together
Yeah.
and kind of come up with these different perspectives and then pick our whiskey that way. It was exactly what happened. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So four different options, and then
Right. And then just us sitting there over the course of about an hour, kind
Yeah.
of talking through the flavor profiles, figuring out what we like. Who was really funny is that I didn't actually even think that this, I didn't think that this would happen, although it's pretty sensible that it did. But like a lot of the conversation was about like, what do we like?
yeah,
But then also like, what do we think our viewers would like? What do you think? Like that was a really like one of the big things. It's like we can pick because it was basically down between two different barrels, and one of them was like a little bit challenging flavor profile,
yeah,
a little bit shorter of a finish, but really for like rye enthusiasts. Like rye enthusiasts like this. And then there was another one that was like a little bit longer finish, a little sweeter, and a little more universal for the people who like bourbon. And so then we're thinking to ourselves, like, okay, like who watches our content? So this was especially, kind of material for Ryan and Whiskey Nomad.
right.
So it's like, who watches our content? And then what do they what do we pick one for the masses that we know that they're going to like, or do we pick one for the professionals? And who's watching the content? Is it the professionals or the masses? And that became a big, kind of question.
Yeah.
We did a video on it. Like we have we have another channel called The Spirited Adventurers, and there's an entire episode on the barrel pick if anyone wants to see it.
All right. I'll have to check that out. Dang. So you guys went the masses route or the?
I don't know. Let's see. Let's give it a taste and we'll talk about it. You and I can talk about it.
Oh man.
Anxious to hear your thoughts.
It's good. It's great. I'm not always the best at picking out the note. I really like
What do you think? Was it the masses one or was it the Rye Pro one though?
Man, I don't know.
Don't sell yourself. Don't sell yourself short. You
Yeah.
you know the answer to this.
Is it the rye lover one, man?
No,
the masses.
This was the masses one. Okay, so it's like it's a little bit hot, like right when you taste it,
Yeah.
but it devolves into a nice bit of sweetness.
Yeah.
That being said, what's really nice about it is that as the flavor of this whiskey builds on your palate, it's got like a medium finish.
Yeah.
As it finishes, you get all those rye notes. So up front, you get that caramel, you get the kind of maple syrup kind of vibe. You get a little vanilla, but then as it builds, you get that maltiness on the back end. You still get the good rye notes for someone who and so for me, I think that this is a great kind of starter rye because it's got the things that you love. I mean, bourbon and rye are very similar. The same rules apply to bourbon and rye. Other than that, instead of it being 51% corn in the case of rye, it's 51% rye. You can still put barley in that mash bill, wheat in that mash bill, corn in that mash bill, and most commonly, you have a mash bill, whether it's bourbon or rye, that either consists of corn, rye, and barley on either side, except for the corn will be higher in the bourbon and the rye will be higher in the rye. But aging and all that is very similar. It's all very similar. So you still get those bourbon notes, and you get that sweetness up front. But then it has a nice complex finish.
Yeah. No, it's great, man. I like the mouth feel too. It's like nice and viscous. It's not very thin. Like nose is good. And I do get that like a little hot on the front with the sweetness coming through. And is this one I mean is the mash bill for this like the low like 51% rye, or is it something higher? Is it like a blend?
Wow, man, you're asking me a question that I don't like.
Sorry.
I don't remember the mash bill. I'd have to look at I have to go and look at my note. Like I'd have to go search through my notes to figure out. I can't remember. We know what the mash bill is. I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And
then did you guys or what was I going to say? Did you already try making cocktails with this? Like, was there something that when you had this one that immediately came to mind, like, oh, this cocktail would be great with this as the base? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like my basis for a great whiskey for specific cocktails are those stirred whiskey forward cocktails like old fashions and Sazeracs and even Manhattans, But I wanted something that would, I've been a real stickler over the course of my career in making like cocktails with the proper spirit, and you know, I get that there's a lot of people who love to make a bourbon Manhattan, and you know what, all power to you. There's 100 years of history of making bourbon old fashions, but I mean Manhattans, and then bourbon old fashions, though they seem to me they can be great. But sometimes when you're using specific bourbons, they're a little too sweet because you've got the sweetness, then you've got this, you know, 1/4 ounce of sugar, like a sugar cube, and it's just a little too sweet, and you get the saccharine flavor on the back palate that I really don't like. And so I've been a real stickler for using rye, or when I use bourbon, I'll use something like Grandad Bonded or something higher in proof, so that you get the spiciness, the hotness of the whiskey will offset the sweetness a little bit.
And then Grandad also happens to be a higher rye bourbon as well, right? Isn't it?
Grandad is a higher rye bourbon. So what's really funny is that Rittenhouse, which everyone loves for old fashions, and I love for old fashions, it's a higher corn rye. Yeah. It's like a bourbon lover's rye. Right? Yeah. So when I was picking this and I was thinking about cocktails, I was like, which one of these expressions is going to make what I like to call, or what we called at Coles anyways, like the Holy Trinity. Although a lot of people say like a Negroni isn't in the Holy Trinity, like that's blasphemous. But it's really like, for me, it's the old fashioned, the Manhattan, and the Sazerac. Yeah. The Holy Trinity of American cocktails. Yeah. American cocktails. And I wanted something that would be like that would appeal to someone who drinks bourbon, because I think in some way, being part of this project made us ambassadors for the category of rye. Yeah. Right. And then and since there is still so much focus on the bourbon category, I wanted something that would be like, you know, this is a bourbon lover would really like this. It's going to make a good old fashioned Manhattan and Sazerac, you know, but it's also sippable and stands on its own. Some of my favorite bottles are the ones that are versatile enough that I'll use them a lot. You know? I'll put it in a cocktail. Or I'll, you know, so I want it to be versatile. That being said, bottle price does play into it. This whiskey is a little bit pricier than, you know, like an everyday sipper. Yeah. That being said, for me, it's like an every month sipper. Yeah. It's like I can afford the bottle, and you know, do I want to, you know, but it's like I don't want to go too much. I think that you really pay what you get for. And so I don't mind higher priced bottles, but this isn't something that I would be putting in my well for cocktails. And most often I'd be sipping this like neat or on a rock or something, you know, and just on its own. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm super intrigued to try this in an old fashioned now. Now I feel like I need to get another bottle, because I have a feeling once I do that, it's going to be game I don't know if you can
this.
Get another bottle.
Or are they maybe already done?
I think it's done. But here's the thing, like we were all talking about it. So you know, me and the other creators have kept in touch, and we've all been talking about this just on a group chat. That like, you know, I don't know if anyone from Sagamore is listening, but like we'd like to do this every year. You know, we thought this was like very successful, and it would be a lot of fun to be able to do a yearly pick. You know? But I think it just greatly depends on how successful. They didn't know how successful this would be. And I don't know if they're going to do a thing where they pick 4 different creators next time and do another creator's cask, but I'd do it every single year. Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. You guys got like even 7-year age statement too, man. My favorite number.
Yeah, they did a good job. I mean, it's like a dream come true for like a first barrel pick, especially when Marius and I were figuring out how to do a barrel pick, you know? Yeah. Because we were, you know, pre-pandemic, we had done a thing with Buffalo Trace where they wanted to show, like, they want us to do a video on their virtual distillery tour. And so we did like a little video game style thing where I like took the virtual tour and we kind of talked our way through the tour. And then we were talking to them about like further projects that we could do with them. And then the pandemic happened and nobody was doing anything. And then the whole thing just died. And I think, you know, I don't know, I don't know. It's not the same people and just never happened. But, you know, I had always been like, I want to go there and just like, I want to do like a Weller pick or something. That would be like amazing. You know what I mean? Do our own Weller or something. Especially because I love that 107. And I've been drinking that 107, you know, even though it's wheated bourbon, it's sweeter. It's like, I've been drinking that 107 since I could get it for $7 a pour. Yeah, and it wasn't a problem.
No, I finally got a bottle of Antique 107 recently for pretty close to SRP. So I'm like stoked on that right now. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm not the biggest weeder fan, but the 107 and the full proof, I get down with those.
Yeah, if I'm drinking whiskey that's weeded, if I'm drinking, then I'm drinking like higher proof whiskey.
Yeah.
I want it to be higher proof because, like I said, like, you know, I like the softness of the wheat. Mm-hmm. It can be a little too sweet for me though.
Yeah.
And so like if you have that proof to kind of offset the sweetness a little bit, to me that makes a great whiskey. But I cannot now. I have never been able to understand this run on Pappy Van Winkle. You know, I don't get it. I don't get it. There's so many other bourbons in $35 and $40 category. I mean, like my everyday sipper that was like $45 is now like $80. But
which one was it?
Noah's Mill.
Noah's Mill.
114.
Okay.
That was like my. I mean, I don't know if that could, you know, $45 is not an everyday sipper price, but for me, that was like I always have a bottle. Even now, I always have a bottle. I always spring for it because I love it.
Yeah, no, that's man, forgive me for this because I think I've only had it once. That's Willet, right?
Yeah, it's Willet
okay.
Distillery. Yeah, that and Rowan's Creek. They
Yeah.
made two that were like similar bottle designs. It's Willet Distillery. Yeah,
Hell yeah.
but that's like Willet sourced whiskey. They're not distilling that.
Gotcha. What is your favorite? I mean, I guess like the best rye you've ever had. We know this is one of them, but another one. The best rye you've had and the best bourbon you've had.
I don't think that I can really distill my whiskey adventures into one best bottle because, you know, every single bottle that I've ever tasted, except for the Sagamore, I've been able to criticize something from it, and I've loved something from it too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's just one bottle. Like I'll say, like my everyday bourbon, it's Old Grandad. Like either the bonded or 114. I won't drink the 80 proof. It's not where it's supposed to be at. But but that bonded is awesome. And for like, I don't know, it's probably about 22 a bottle now.
Yeah.
When I was buying it, starting to buy it was just north of $16. And it was like, for that price is amazing. What I really love in bottles is being able to find something that's super high quality and low cost.
Yeah.
That I can readily replace. And so there's a few of them that I go for. And then there's like certain whiskeys that I go to for certain things. Like, so for instance, like the Four Roses small batch, you know, that whiskey is not exceptional, but it makes if you want to bacon fat wash a bourbon, that's the bourbon to do it with.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's like in that context, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But on its own, you know, like if I'm just drinking it, to me, it's like, it's not that exceptional of a bottle.
Yeah. I mean, and because for you, you're more of the cocktail person of this group that went to pick this cask. I mean, is whiskey even the spirit or I guess American whiskey, is that like the spirit you're most like into yourself, or is there
no? I mean, I actually like about 4 years ago, I went down the rum rabbit hole, and I'm still like blown away by it. Whiskey is the thing that I'm most comfortable with because it's where I started my journey from, like, you know, I'm talking about like in my early 20s when, you know, was when I discovered bourbon. And then not only that, but also when I was just before I moved to LA, I was, you know, just 21 years old. I got a job at a wine and spirits store in this little town called Winchester where my parents lived. And they were, you know, wine focused, but they had like a bourbon section. And I had to learn about bourbon specifically to talk about it with customers, to be able to sell it to them or answer questions or whatever. And so that's sort of like, I'm just the most comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite category of spirit anymore. When I became a bartender and started learning cocktails, I switched to like gin as a focus and really learned everything I could about gin because there's just so many classic cocktails that are gin based, you know?
Right.
And then I became a real big, you know, insufferable gin snob for a while. And then rum, you know, when I first started, you know, even like when I was beginning with Barfly, like my rum knowledge was like not that much. I knew a little bit about Jamaican rum from just having, you know, certain bottles behind the bar at Kohl's. And, you know, for instance, we had the Plantation 3-Star in the well, you know what I'm saying? Like we had certain bottles of rum that we used, but I didn't know a ton about the category. And it wasn't until I started getting into tiki cocktails and learning about rum and then just realizing that rum is probably the most versatile group of spirits on the planet. I think it's way more versatile than whiskey can be because it's made in every single country in the world pretty much. And then also, even though this is beginning to change and there are certain, you know, like countries that are now instituting or want to institute more laws about how their rum is produced to create a more specialized thing like rum agricole or something, which I think they have a geographic designation for rum agricole, and so is cachaça, I believe. There are very few rules regarding rum. The only thing that it needs to be is distilled from a cane sugar product, whether it's fresh cane juice or molasses. And so because of that, there's so much variety in that category.
Yeah. Are there a lot of, and we'll wrap it up soon, but are there a lot of rums or brands that like add a lot of sugar to it though? Is it kind of hard to find like a good brand of rum that doesn't have a lot of, I guess, additives?
Yes, that does
stuff?
happen a lot.
Okay.
Although I will say that there's additives in tequila too, and you've got to go out and find the brands that don't do that.
for sure.
I mean, like, that's actually a big thing right now. Big conversation is like, what are the tequilas that are not adding that 1% of like, oak extract, glycerin, or even sugar into there, or vanilla extract, or all the things that they put in there. And there are brands that do it. So rum is the same way. Because there's very little regulation, there are additives in a lot of rum, but there's additives in whiskey too. How do you think they get? It's not just the lack of. It's not just the chill filtering that gives it an even color. They put caramel coloring in bourbon.
Right.
It's legal to do that. So yes, you have some brands that definitely do that. Sometimes for better or worse, they do that, and then there are other brands that don't. There's a company called Renegade. That I just got turned on to by a friend of mine, my friend Dylan, who gone to Grenada, the island of Grenada, and they have not only a really old rum making tradition, but there's a couple of rums. There are ones called Rivers. They only make overproof rum. It's pre-cask rum, and there's no additives in it. It's fully natural. And then there's another one called Renegade that was started by one of the guys that started the Bruichladdich distillery. And his whole focus, just like with Bruichladdich or with Waterford whiskey, is all about terroir, introducing the idea of terroir. So what he's doing is he built this $25 million distillery on the island of Grenada. They are producing sugarcane from these heirloom, sugarcane species. They're putting the sugarcane on specific parts of the island and taking it from there and then distilling it. I have 2 expressions at my house that are pre-cask. No cask. Everything's okay. I don't want to say that everything's organic. I think it is, but I have to check to be 100% positive. But also no additives, and some of the craziest, most amazing rum I've ever tasted.
And when you say pre-cask, so you mean like basically
still.
new make, like just off the
off the still, but then also it's 100 proof, so it's off the still, and then they add water to it to bring the proof to where they want it to be, and then they bottle it. I mean, I didn't do a big deep dive on the entire process of what they do, so I don't want to speak to it now. But pre-cask meaning it hasn't sat in a cask; it's completely clear. Yeah. Although for instance, in rum, being completely clear doesn't necessarily mean you haven't been in a cask. Like Bacardi is a 2-year aged in like bourbon casks or whatever, and then charcoal filtered to strip the color. So
I had no idea of that. Wow. Okay.
Right. So even if you have, that's what's great about rum though. Is that like you can't like the old school way of classifying rum is by color. Yeah. White. It's like white, light, gold, dark, right? But the thing is that doesn't tell you anything about what's in the bottle, especially when you have, rums that have been aged and then charcoal filtered to strip the color. Yeah. And so it's not the same thing as whiskey, where it's like, if it's White Dog whiskey, it's never been in a barrel. That's not true for rum.
Wow. Can you recommend a couple sipping rums that you've been into?
Well, if anyone wants to try that Renegade rum, it's pretty incredible. I'm not sure what the availability of that rum is, but I got to tell you, let me just tell you this. It's like you get all of the, like kind of this rum agricole, flavor from it. It's made from like cane juice, not molasses, right? So it's like you get this rum agricole, these grassy flavors, and then it devolves into like fruit and like a little bit, and then like a little bit like, pineapple-y and kind of like these tropical flavors. And then all this minerality. And then it's like beef tallow and sausage on the, it's crazy.
That's
it's the
journey,
craziest thing I've ever.
That's a real journey.
It's the craziest thing I've ever tasted. And it's it's one of my favorites. Rivers is another one that's really good. Rivers is just being exported now. It's so popular that they only up until recently started making enough to export. because everybody on the island would buy it. And they make 2 expressions. One you have to go to Granada to have because it's not available for like, it can't be on an airplane because it's like 170 proof or some crazy shit. It's like, it's insane. It's like an insanely high alcohol that you can't have it on a plane. And then they make one for tourists to take home, which is the one that I have, which is like 160 or something like that.
Damn.
And they only make overproof rum and unaged. So I really like that stuff a lot. It's really cool.
And is that something like, at that proof, can you even stand to drink that neat, or do you need to add water? Do you need to cut it?
I mean, I like to add water to a lot of spirits that I drink because you lengthen the flavor profile out.
Right.
And if you're really trying to understand the flavor profile, you want to spread that profile out so that you can really understand the nuances. Nobody drinking neat whiskey, especially over 100 proof, is going to be able to, really decipher what's in it. You can get some of the stronger notes, but a lot of the more subtle ones are going to be lost. And so you need to add water. So for me, like when you like people drink like scotch and soda, that's like the most professional way to drink a scotch, especially if you want to kind of understand what it is. Yeah. Because you just don't want, condensed flavor. Yeah. So I add water to everything I drink. No, I mean, not always. Sometimes I'll do it neat just because I want to have a strong punch in my mouth. But
Yeah, I always consider that. I'm like, man, I need to start adding water to some of this stuff, but I just love the punch, as you said, like too much, right? Punch, I drink it. I'm like, oh, I'm good right now. Like, there's enough for me in this moment. Right. But, well, yeah, man, we'll wrap it up here. Leo, thanks so much for coming down and joining me and just sharing your story and the pick with us. Yeah, I mean, I guess where can we all find you on social media and YouTube and?
Yeah, I mean, just at The Educated Barfly everywhere. Instagram and YouTube was where we're most active. I got like a TikTok that I'm trying to figure out just for the heck of it, because why not? And then that's it. And then if anyone ever wants to ask me a question, just DM me on Instagram. I always get back to everyone.
Nice. And you have another channel you said too, right? Spirited
Adventures. It's called The Spirited
Okay.
Adventurers, and that's been kind of in flux. It used to be called Barfly FreePour, and it was just sort of like, we just realized that a lot of things that we wanted to try and do didn't do well on our main channel. Main channel is really about cocktails, and that's what people want there. So we wanted to do like product reviews and stuff like that. So we started doing that to like, some pretty good success. Then we got into the travel stuff. We were doing that a little bit, but then we just run some cost analysis on it, and we were like, we're not going to do this anymore. So I think it's going to turn into like more like spirits tasting, and like I'm going to have guests on and stuff. So maybe you should come on and we should do some tasting together and do an episode at some point.
I'll try to get better at my tasting notes. I'm just like, oh, this is good. Cool.
We can train you up. We'll get you tasting stuff.
All right, man. Thank you. Cheers.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks and a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks and a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksandamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.